Welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests. Meeting number 5,277. Our birthday boys today are Brian Burke with eBay and Troy Jones with Enterprise Trust and Investment. So happy birthday to those two guys. You know, for 12 years, Dave Cortese was our county supervisor for District 3, which is shown on our map, well, right there. Monday, he'll be our state senator for District 15, Senatorial District 15. Congratulations, Dave. But before you go, in 10 minutes, please tell us about District 3. And, you know, our Rotarian, Otto Lee, will be taking notes of what you say. So tell him everything. Let him have it. All right. You ready to go, Dave?
Yeah, thank you, Fernando. Absolutely.
Sure.
And thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation. I think this is, you know, a good thing that you're doing. All things considered, you know, obviously you always have a full agenda. So squeezing a little bit of time for these kind of public service messages, I think is a good thing. You know, I joined Rotary at what was then called San Jose East. I later changed to San Jose East Evergreen in 1986 when I was in the throes of running my family's real estate business, investment and development business. My office was out on McKee Road in one of the family-owned properties there, kind of the legacy property on the old family homestead that later got partially converted to a retail shopping center, kind of a strip size center. I later remodeled that a couple of years before joining the San Jose City Council and expanded it dramatically, you know, into a much larger neighborhood shopping center. But my office was right there. And some of you have been around or been Rotarians for a while. Remember the drying shed was across the street on Toyon. And there was a guy named Andy Bonfield who was, he was my CPA for all intents and purposes. I think he was actually an enrolled agent, but he was a very dedicated Rotarian and, you know, did a lot of makeups all over the county. He was actually from Los Gatos, but he was a member of the San Jose East Club, and he had it timed so that my standing meetings with him on business, on accounting stuff, were perfectly timed so that he could wrap up with me and then just walk across the street, across Toyon to the drying shed, to the Rotary Club meeting. And again, it was his home club. I'm not sure to this day why his home club wasn't Los Gatos or downtown, but that said, you know, one day when, you know, we were wrapping up our meeting, he said, why don't you come over with me as a guest? And it was October of 1986. I was just in the process of converting an 18-acre apricot orchard into 313 apartment units as, you know, part of my changing and transforming family business. And that was my beginning in Rotary. I later became president of that club. And as all of you know, in the smaller clubs, I mean, we were big when we had 30, 35 members. Seems like almost everybody gets a chance to you know, take a leadership position at some point, or maybe be president of the club. So I'm very familiar with all of what you do in the community service, which ties so directly with the kind of public service that you see, that I eventually got into, you know, years later when I joined the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors 12 years ago. You know, after 8 years on the city council, there was a guy in the Rotary Club who was a charter member at San Jose East named Jerry Eric, and he owned Eric Printing. He used to all printing for San Jose State University, and great guy, passed away a few years ago. But he pulled me aside one day along with Len Ramirez, not Len Ramirez from KPIX, Len Ramirez's father, Len Sr., and said, have you considered, you know, going into, you know, running for office basically. And there was a school board seat open at Eastside Union in '92. So I've been a Rotarian for about 6 years. And, you know, we don't, that kind of politics, those conversations happen in the parking lot sometimes, never inside the Rotary Club, right? So, you know, they kind of got me thinking about it. You know, maybe I can do public service through elected office. Maybe I want to try that. And of course, my father had by that point been in elected office for a number of years, local government and then state government. So by osmosis, I was aware of what he was doing. even though I was, a full-time business person. That said, what I want to tell you is, upon joining the Board of Supervisors, what became very apparent to me right away, especially coming from a private sector background, is that, frankly, the quality of professional work product that by and large that the folks at the county generate, throughout the system. Sure, there's exceptions. I mean, there's 22,000 employees, there's 40 departments and agencies. It's a massive organization. The budget last year was $8 billion annually. I don't think anybody knows the net worth of the county. I tried to get that information and order that up one day as a county supervisor, and I'm just giving you these facts to, put it in perspective. But at one point we were told, and I'm sure Larry Stone has the assessor's role to figure it out, but that the county has an interest in about 700 different parcels of property, the county government throughout the county. Just to give you an idea, you got to figure we aren't leveraged in property as a county, right? Like I was as a private sector guy. So that's net worth, right? I mean, that's just, equity basically. And for those of you who have some real estate background, that adds up pretty fast in this valley. God only knows what that, if you really did a balance sheet, what the net worth of the county really would be, when you counted cash, net real estate equity and everything else, but it's massive. It's got to be as big or bigger than the largest driving industry companies in this valley. And that would make sense. I mean, we have the same number of employees at the county as the two or three largest companies do in the valley. So it's a big operation. But, I said I was impressed by the quality of work, because I think as a private sector person, even when I got to the city, there was a rap on government that, you're not going to see the quality that you're used to, from a private sector standpoint. And that's just not true. It's just not true. I think the pitfalls and the mistakes are much more transparent and apparent to people, because it's a public entity. Obviously, if I trip on something in my private sector office, nobody really knows, right? Except me and my partners, and they get mad at me. But down at the county, when that happens, everybody knows, or at the city. So that probably contributes a little bit. But when you look at the tremendous work that's being done, with that quality work, legally, but probably more importantly from the county standpoint, from a safety net standpoint, and from a standpoint that I think a lot of Rotarians would be interested in, besides just safety net. For example, as you know, Fernando, the county's got a major role in historic heritage. I remember Alita Bray approaching you in my first term on the Board of Supervisors, and I was over at History San Jose, and she kind of waved her hand like that and said, "You realize that the county has as much of a financial interest in all of this as the city or anybody else. This is yours, meaning yours as a public entity." And there's a lot of little, I don't call them secrets, but a lot of very subtle involvement, but big, powerful involvement that the county has in our day-to-day lives like that, or in terms of opportunities for us to, either preserve or advance, or protect, this wonderful valley that we live in, whether you've been here like me from the Valley of Heart's Delight, or whether you just arrived on an H-1B visa. I think everybody that comes here finds something that they want to protect and interests that they want to advance. And the county is just all over that, whether it's trying to close the digital divide and, provide for the 15,000 kids in households that can't connect right now and do distance learning, or whether it's on some bigger issue. We have been involved, as you know, and I co-chaired the 2016 Measure A campaign, the first time anywhere in the state where $700 million was assembled for extremely low income housing. It's just that money just never existed in local government or state government for that matter. So the county's such a big player and needs to be, in terms of homelessness and low income housing. Climate, we've kind of gone from nowhere a few years back, a dozen years ago, and Supervisor Yeager and I came over from the city, and we had been very aggressive in San Jose in terms of a green vision, and we tried to bring that to the county. And I'm proud to say that the county is now 100% renewable. It's has, I believe, still may have the second largest energy storage contract of any public entity in the country. We have 4 major solar farms. I'm not talking about parking lot structures. I'm talking about 4 freestanding major solar farms that are developed. And it goes on and on. And the county now is viewed as a global leader in what local governments can do and should do in terms of the climate crisis. Transportation, I think everybody knows that the county reps, the supervisors themselves play a huge role in all that. I mean, VTA was originally a county agency in the first place. And in regional government, I won't try to take a deep dive in that today, but I've had the opportunity to serve there, where all of the federal and state money gets funneled back through to local governments in the Bay Area. It's basically the majority of those commissioners that are making those decisions are county supervisors. Justice reform.
You got 30 seconds.
We control the jails, right? For better or worse. So if there's going to be reforms, they're going to come from your board of supervisors. And then, education, as a council member, you will hear candidates, and I did it myself. You'll hear mayors talking about being the education mayor. The reality is, aside from our school districts ourselves, it's the county government that has the biggest hookup or connection or linkage or ability to help, with education needs. So
10 minutes are up, Dave.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful opportunity. I want to thank everyone who's encouraged me and supported me along the way, and look forward to working with all of you in the future. And I look forward in continuing my longstanding membership, if you will, or standing as a Rotarian. So thank you for having me, Fernando, and all of you. Thank you so much.
We wish you all the best of luck as the senator. Thank you. Now for some quick announcements. The Culinary and Hospitality Committee is having a free virtual holiday event Wednesday, December 16th. Everyone who signs up on the Rotary website link or in response to the email we'll be sending out to this event will get a goodie bag. So pick yours up at the Gordon House on Monday, the 14th. But if you can't, please give us the address and zip code where you like to have your gift delivered. The noontime event will include a Bert George wine tasting, and he's putting a bottle of wine in your goodie bag, but you have to sign up. Lastly, please email your favorite family holiday photo to Matt Breaker so the committee can prepare a photo montage to show on Wednesday, the 16th. Look for more information in our bulletin. Also, as a way to stay connected with each other, how about sending a holiday card to your Rotary sponsor? I'm sure the sponsor would like to hear from you, or to a surviving spouse or family member, if that's applicable. And next, we hold our annual meeting to elect members to the foundation board, club board, and to choose our president-elect nominee. And this annual meeting is required by our bylaws, and representing the foundation nominating committee is Foundation President Clarence Stone. Clarence, are you ready?
I am. Thank you, Fernando.
Hit it.
Thank you all. I'm delighted to share with you the Foundation Nominating Committee. Foundation VPs Sarah Klisch, Chris Duke, Club President Fernando, President-elect Mr. Borkenhagen, Club Treasurer Darren Sparks, and myself is proposing the following Foundation Board Trustees be re-elected to a new 2-year term starting July 2021, and those Rotarians are Dave Davis, Chris Duke, and Shashir Doctor. Take it away, Fernando.
All right. Are there any foundation board nominations from our audience? If so, please indicate by pressing the raise hand icon button. Seeing none, is anyone opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, the nominees are unanimously re-elected to a 2-year term for 2021 through 2023. Congratulations, Dave, Chris, and Shishir. Next, Clarence.
Thank you again, Fernando. There are also openings for 3 new Foundation Board trustees, and the nominating committee nominates Mauricio Cordova, Audrey Fox, Sean O'Kane to a new 2-year term as new foundation trustees for fiscal years 2021 through 2023, with Mauricio starting to serve immediately to fill a vacancy. Take it away,
Okay.
Fernando.
Are there any foundation board nominations from our audience? If so, please indicate by pressing the raised hand icon button. Seeing none, is anyone opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, Mauricio Cordova, Audrey Fox, and Sean O'Kane are elected as new foundation trustees to serve a 2-year term for 2021 through 2023. Congratulations, and we want to thank Fred Began and Jane Light, whose terms end in June 30th next year. Next, Clarence.
Thank you, Fernando. And now for new foundation officers. Christine Burrows is nominated as Vice President of Grants to serve a 1-year term starting July 2021. Christine's had a long career as a nonprofit executive and has been a member of the club since 2003. She served on the contributions committee this year. Also, Dave Davis is being nominated as Vice President of Finance to serve a 1-year term starting in July 2021. Dave's been a Rotarian since 1988. Dave's a CPA and the managing partner at Johansson Yaw, CPA firm here in town. And he chaired our audit committee this year. Thank you all, Fernando, but take it away.
That's quite a lineup. Are there any other nominations from the audience? If so, please indicate by pressing the raised hand button. Seeing none, is anyone opposed? No? Same sign. Seeing none, these nominees are unanimously elected. So congratulations and thank you, Christine and Dave. Let's all thank all the trustees for their service. And looks like we made. Next, we have past President Jay Rock nominating. Jay?
Hello, President Fernando. You froze there, but I think you just called on me to deliver some excitement to the club for today. Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased. Can you hear me okay?
Thanks, Jay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, everybody. So I'm very proud and happy and excited to be here today to share our nominating committee's work. The club's nominating committee consists of 4 third-year directors and 5 club presidents as prescribed by our bylaws. There is the image of those great people who came together to do this hard work. They chose 4 new directors who must have been in the club for at least 3 years and have demonstrated active volunteer leadership in club activities. We also have selected a nominee for president-elect who needed to have completed a 3-year term on the board of directors. So first, I want to thank all of those members of the nominating committee for coming together and doing this hard work. Also, before I turn to our nominations, President Fernando and the rest of the club, I have the privilege of announcing today that our president-elect, Steve Borkenhagen, has selected past President Gary Giannini to serve as his past president representative on the club board during the Rotary year 2021-2022. Thank you and congratulations to past President Gary. Now to the excitement. Let's start with the nominees for our new club directors. First, she jumped into Rotary with both feet, starting a new committee as a Red Badge member, serving on the next big project committee as well. And she also is currently co-chairing our Red Badge committee. And attending the Rotary International Convention in Hamburg, our first nominee is Terry Chapman. Next nominee, former Comerica executive who secured the bank's multi-year title sponsorship to our gala and also served as an excellent chair of our International Services Committee and who incredibly, amazingly, and generously sponsors and visits international projects, Mike Fulton. Next, our current chair of the International Services Committee, an active member of the Culinary and Hospitality Committee, where he is the Lederhosen, top hat, ugly holiday wearing sweater guy, and event promoter, Tim Gill. And finally, our nominee for the board club is co-chair with Terry of our Red Badge Committee, an Enterprise Leadership Conference participant and graduate of the year-long Rotary District Leadership Academy, Helen Lambert. Fernando, those are our nominees for the club board.
Hey, look exciting, and thank you, Mr. Excitement. Are there any other nominees from the audience? If so, please indicate by pressing the raised hand icon. Seeing none, is anyone opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, these 4 nominees to the Board of Directors for 2021 through 2024 are approved. So congratulations, Terry, Tim, and Helen. You'll be joining a great group of directors and you serve us well. Okay, back to you.
All right, outstanding. Congratulations to all 4 of you. And now, presuming that we don't have a Zoom failure, I get to turn to the exciting news of announcing the nomination for our president-elect. That's for the Rotary year 2022-2023. Here we go. This Rotarian is known for being everywhere and for telling us all about it. The nominee for Rotary's 2022-2023 president regularly takes the microphone to tell us about the new and exciting things happening around downtown. He's been masterful in helping to lead and MC our annual Lee Weimer's Emerging Artist Awards presentation, and his sense of humor and wit are on full display for helping to create and MC the annual Club President Debunkings. He also served on the Downtown Development Committee and our Program Committee. If you read the Mercury News, you know who our president nominee is. And by now, I expect all of you know who it is. With great pleasure and honor, on behalf of this year's nominating committee, I present the nomination of our 2022-2023 club president, Mr. Sal Pizarro.
You do bring excitement. You do bring excitement. Are there any president-elect nominations from our audience? If so, please indicate by pressing the raise hand icon button. Seeing none, is anyone opposed? Same sign. Seeing none, Sal, you are unanimously elected to serve as our president for 2022-2023. Congratulations, Sal, the pride of University of Santa Barbara. Sal, you got a couple of brief remarks?
Well,
All right, Sal.
thank you, everybody. Thank you to the nominating committee and all of you who just did this. I'll tell you, I was thinking about stepping down from the debunking committee soon, and I did not honestly think this is how that would happen. You know, I'm humbled by this honor, and at the moment, unprepared for this responsibility, but I know I'll get there. I've never expected this to happen when Lee Weimers brought me into this club in 2006. This is the furthest thing from my mind. But I know that so many past presidents that I've talked to say that this experience has deepened their connection to Rotary and to the community. And I have no doubt that will happen with me. And I'm really looking forward to being a bigger part of this club in a couple of years and getting to work with all of you in an even new way. So I appreciate it and can't wait to start. And I'm going to start by being short, Fernando, to keep us on time.
You're doing a fine job. And believe me, it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And you'll do a great job. And I'm looking forward to your involvement because you always bring a smile to my face anytime I hear you talk. Thank you very much. And congratulations to you and congratulations to our trustee board member, trustee and club board members. I'm always impressed by the willingness of our people to step up and really give themselves to such a worthy cause as is our Rotary Club. And I'm very proud to be, of course, your president. And Sal, you won't believe how much you're going to enjoy being out in front of us because COVID-19 will be behind you, pal. And that's saying a lot. That's saying quite a lot. All right. So we did finish ahead of time, and I want to thank the two presenters here, Jay and Clarence, for their willingness to muscle through all of this. Next, we've got Charlie McCullum. He's a retired editor with the Mercury News and a member of our program committee who will be in a conversation with our program speaker with whom he used to work when she was at the Mercury News. And Charlie, are you ready?
I'm ready, President Fernando.
Great. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted you to note that I used to edit Sal. Remember that, Sal, later on. Our guest today is Killion, who has covered Bay Area sports for more than a quarter of a century. She's an award-winning columnist and a veteran of 11 Olympics, several World Cups, and the Tour de France, and joined the Chronicle in 2012. Before that, she worked for the Los Angeles Times, Sports Illustrated, and the Mercury News, where I had the pleasure of working with her. She is a New York Times bestselling author, having co-written Solo, a memoir of hope with soccer star Hope Solo, Throw Like a Girl with softball player Jenny Finch, and 2 middle grade books on soccer. She's a graduate of UCLA and the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism. She was named California Sports Writer of the Year in 2014, 2017, and 2018. And she has 2 children and lives in Mill Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce Ann Killion. Ann, are you there?
Maybe she's muted.
I am muted, sorry. I'm here now.
Ann, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's great to be here on a day that Sal was elected, because I used to work with Sal as well as with you at the Mercury News.
Well, Mercury News rules. So let's start with the impact of the pandemic on professional sports. Has any professional sport handled this well?
Sure. The NBA did handle it well, and I'm going to put that in the past tense because they're about to try to open up a regular season in unbubbled in 29 different locations for 30 teams. And I don't know how that's going to go, but the NBA had a very strict bubble, as we know, in Orlando over the summer. They were able to complete their playoffs, and they didn't have outbreaks. They had it all very well controlled, and I think it was successful, but I don't know how that's going to work with them trying to restart the season in the teeth of the pandemic. Other than that, it's been pretty hit and miss. I mean, it's been very erratic. Behind me, I have an NFL game on my TV. It's 12:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. And that just shows you just how strange the situation is.
I was going to ask about just how strange it's gotten. Do you think the NFL is actually going to be able to finish this season, given the current surge and the likelihood of another, over the Christmas holidays? This past weekend, you talked about the Ravens-Steelers game that's on right now. You had the 49ers going to Arizona. You had, the Broncos playing without a quarterback. Are they going to be able to stagger through the season?
I think they're going to try. It's pretty clear that they're trying. It's pretty clear that staggering through the season is priority number one, and not players' health, not optics, not what makes sense. Those things are all take a back seat to trying to complete a 16-game season. And, they're determined to do it. I find it frustrating. I find it insane. I think I'm a history major. I think when 50 years from now, when people look back on this pandemic, the fact that we are playing sports in the midst of outbreaks and continuing to force these games in is going to look absurd, probably. It's all about money. It's all about television revenue. The NFL games are getting ginormous ratings. We've just seen the ratings over the Thanksgiving Day games, which were some of the worst games you would ever want to watch, were just through the roof. So that's what it's all about. It's not about player safety. If it was about player safety, the team behind me, the Ravens, who have had, I think, 25 positive tests in the last week or so, they're missing maybe 10 starters. I mean, they wouldn't, if it was about competitive value or players' health, they wouldn't be doing that. They wouldn't have put a a practice squad guy who had 4 hours notice behind center in the Denver game. It's lunacy in my mind.
You've written about in the last couple of days about the impact on the 49ers of moving to Arizona. I'm talking now about the players.
Right.
I mean, you know, we think of these as highly paid professional athletes, but that's got to be very hard on them. I think it's Raheem Mostert who almost broke down talking about being away from his family during the holidays. I mean, it must be very tough on them.
Well, it is tough. And let's not forget, we're not just talking about players. This is a giant operation. And so and I've gotten some email like, who cares about those millionaires? People are in line for food banks. And that's true. I mean, on the grand scheme of things, we're not going to get our violins for the 49ers. But it just shows, to me, it just illustrates the absurdity of what we're living through, that these guys are getting on a plane in about an hour and they don't know when they're coming home. And they're going to a place where the coronavirus is far less under control than the county that they're leaving, which has stricter measures. And, you know, we don't have to rehash the politics of a virus and why it's so out of control and in various hotspots around the country. But I mean, I feel, you know, I had to travel. I've had to be away from my small children during the holidays because of NFL games. Now I wasn't playing and I wasn't being paid that way, but you know, I mean, it's not fun. And to find out with a couple days notice that you're going to be gone possibly for 5 weeks is tough. But in addition, there are 95 people who are not players who are going to be going, who are being uprooted and relocated. And some of them are hourly wage people. There's, you know, people who have put down, you know, they cut up the film, they videotape the practices, they are trainers' assistants, they're PR people. You know, there's a huge operation behind the players who also are being uprooted. And I'm not saying it's any harder than what a lot of other people are going through. It's not as hard as what many are going through. But again, it's unprecedented. It just shows kind of the cravenness of the NFL, and it is, you know, I mean, it's newsworthy. It's crazy.
I'm going to go back to the NBA for just a minute because you were right. You're right. They did the bubble tournament. It was great. But now they're facing, I mean, the Warriors couldn't even stage their first practice before they started getting, you know, positive tests and so forth. What are you hearing from the players? What's their reaction been to having to start a season that sort of looks like the regular one, but really isn't?
I don't really know because the players have just been on Zoom. Like Steph just had a press conference, and sadly I had a conflict, so I missed it. But you know, I mean, I think everyone's reaction is pretty much the same. Gosh, we hope this works out okay. Gosh, we have no idea if it's going to. I mean, the thing about the NBA is they're not going to, as I said, they're not going to be bubbled. They're playing indoors. They also have a game day staff, just like the NFL, but all the operations are conducted indoors. All the practices are conducted indoors. There's only 15 guys on a roster. And as we've seen with football, you know, these position groups get wiped out with one positive test, you know, through contact tracing. So you could have an entire roster wiped out. These guys hang out together, they socialize together, they're in practice together. I mean, and they're also all young men, and having raised one of those myself, I realize how hard it is to tell a young man in his 20s that who does not have millions of dollars at his disposal to do, you know, how to behave. So I think that, not just the Warriors, but everyone, I think it's going to be a really, really tough test to try and see if they can do this. And again, I don't know why they didn't wait. Every epidemiologist in the country knew this surge was coming. It looks worse than what some of them, there was some thought with masks, with, more people getting flu shots, with many things already being shut down, that the surge would somehow not be as bad, but clearly that is not materializing. I don't know why the NBA could not have waited until they were talking about starting on Martin Luther King Day, which is also a great big day in their on their calendar. It's always a marquee game day. Why didn't they wait for that? Well, we know why. They might have lost as much as $1 billion, according to some estimates that I've read. They want those Christmas Day games. And that means teams getting on planes and traveling. The Warriors are supposed to go to Milwaukee on Christmas Day. Like, I don't know. It's all about it. Again, it has nothing to do with sanity or with health. It has only to do with chasing the dollar.
Obviously, because we're down here in San Jose, we're very interested in the Sharks and the NHL. It sort of kind of it's sort of forgotten that the NHL kind of pulled off a bubble tournament too. But of course, they went to Canada to do it. What do you think about the Sharks at this point are already going to have a problem with finding, being able to play here, and now aren't they in the same position as the NHL or the NBA, with the added problem of Canada being involved?
Well, the NHL has not set any firm dates yet, and they're talking about January. So in that regard, the NHL seems to be more sane than the other sports. I think starting in January at least gives you a bit of a fighting chance. I don't know why we're seeing Stanford and all college basketball is trying to start now. Why didn't they wait until January? I just don't understand. We knew there was going to be a holiday surge. It's just adding this crazy stress to an already crazy stressful situation. I don't know why people are trying to start before 2021 anyway. I do think the NHL, at least because they are not starting right away. We'll see. Things could look different in a month. They really could, and that would be beneficial for the Sharks. And you're right, the NHL did pull off a fairly entertaining 2-city bubble in Canada, and so they also did a good job. The WNBA also did a good job down in Florida with the NBA. And then, I don't know what people think about baseball. I was personally entertained by the playoffs, not so much the regular season. The regular season was absurd. 60 games, that's not a baseball season.
Yeah. You mentioned how much the NFL is losing. Clearly the Warriors are losing money. They've never been able to open the Chase Center. What's the long-term impact on pro sports going to be? We'll get to college in a minute, but what do you think the long-term impact on pro sports is going to be?
Well, I think it's going to be tough. I think that there's, the NFL is going to be fine, right? That's one of the reasons they're forcing this season in is a very small percentage of the NFL overall revenues comes from ticket sales or from concession sales compared to other sports. Now in basketball and in baseball, it's a huge percentage, and they don't really make the TV money until they get to the playoffs. So, all of that, all those economic drivers are why we're seeing the decisions being made that they are. But I think it's going to be, I think the NBA is going to be fine. They have a ton of money. There are probably certain markets that are going to struggle a little bit more. I don't think Joe Lacob's team is one of them. But I think here in the Bay Area, in terms of baseball, I think that, the A's, I think that they're theoretical plans for a stadium that have always been, the stuff of myth in my mind, because there's not really any solid evidence or plan in place to build a stadium. That whole idea just seems to be getting further and further from reality. And, you look at what is happening to retail, which was already happening to retail, but is happening even quicker with the pandemic. This is, in a lot of ways, the pandemic is an accelerator for all sorts of things happening in our world. But, the owner of the A's is one person. He does not share that burden. The Giants have like 30 different owners. So that the economic burden is shared by a lot of different parties. In John Fisher's case, he's it. And most of his wealth, now I'm not saying that, all his personal wealth is tied up in the Gap, but his wealth does stem from the Gap, which has been struggling mightily. So maybe we'll see the A's be sold. I don't know, but I just think that whatever momentum and plans they thought they had back in 2019 in terms of a stadium and, increasing their payroll subsequently, et cetera, I think those have just gone backwards. So, I mean, I think it kind of varies team to team, how this pandemic shakes out. I think most professional sports franchises can get through this one terrible year. If it was to be prolonged, that would be a different story.
I want to jump to college sports for a minute. I think I know from what you've written what the answer to this is. But how do you think the major conferences, and I suppose include the NCAA, have handled this so far?
I think it's been a disaster. I think it's just, it's hard for me to compare the Pac-12 to Alabama. The SEC and the Big Ten have a different level of financial profit coming in, of commitment, of crazy, lifeblood. This is actually an essential thing to do than most of the Pac-12. I just think it's just the height of hypocrisy. Again, the pandemic exposes a lot of things, and hypocrisy is a big one. The students can't be back in class, yet they're doing backflips to try and get, some very average football games played. Stanford, where there are no students on campus except for maybe some graduate students who have to be in labs or whatever. But their football team is up in Washington, running around trying to find high school practice fields to practice on so that they can play a game, which I think will be their fourth game of the season, maybe. It's just absurd to me. And these students have no rights. They have no contract. They have no medical protection. They are under threat, and it's already been exposed in many instances. Threat of losing their scholarships if they choose to opt out. There was a big story in the New York Times about a Cal player. He's a walk-on, but he lost his scholarship that he just won because he opted out because of high-risk issues. I mean, it just kind of turns my stomach. I mean, it really does. It's very hard for me to watch, and as someone who covers sports, I kind of feel like it's my job to point out the hypocrisy. I don't know anyone who is really like going, yeah, team, this is fantastic. It just seems silly. And now, now basketball is going to start in the same situation. All these sports, like say the Stanford women's soccer team, reigning national champions, they're not allowed to run around and try and find a field to play on, but the football team is. I mean, why is that? We know why, right? So it's just, I don't know. It's just it's at the very least, it's a bad look.
There are a couple of questions there are the questions coming in from some of the members. I just want to get to a couple of them. But particularly, I want to talk a little bit about the social justice movement, and going beyond the initial impact. You know, how is this going to change? You know, particularly professional sports. I mean, it seems like there was that initial impact, and then it just sort of went away.
Well, I don't know if it went away. I mean, the NFL is the only only sport really in the spotlight right now, and you know, the NFL has been the least progressive of all the sports anyway. But
More than baseball?
well, no, not more than baseball, but I mean, it's not. They're very good at muting it. You know, like, you know, there are still guys kneeling. There are still guys, but you know that you don't see any of that, right? Because everything's on TV now, so they're not showing the national anthems, like all that pageantry that was so important to show all the time, and the flyovers. Well, with no fans in the stands, that stuff isn't happening. So you know, the TV cameras don't capture it. You know, I think that it's not going to go away. I think that what players know now, and they've been gradually knowing it with every passing season over the last decade. And as a new generation comes in and into power in terms of players, they are well aware of their own power on social media. And that's something that just continues to evolve. And I think we saw it at its height this summer. And I think that, you know, when players chose not to actually play and kind of the sports world was shut down for a couple of days there in the summer, I think it not only gave the players confidence that they do have a voice, it also woke up a lot of executives to the fact that, you know, this is an issue that is not going to go away. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There's groups that have been formed. There's pressure to bear, and I think it's going to be a continual talking point. I mean, hopefully the things, you know, that caused the flare-ups we're going to have fewer of those, because I mean, that's, you know, causes there's civil unrest in the streets, and you know, it's not good for anyone. But I think the awareness and the commitment to diversity, to social justice, to some of these issues that are very important to the players and to many of the people in sports, I don't think they're going to go away.
Why is it, and this may be just my impression, but why does the NBA and the WNBA seem so far ahead of the other? The players seem so far ahead in terms of their response to
yeah, this? I mean, I think it's something about the sport itself. You know, there's fewer players. There's not that, basketball is not that militaristic kind of mindset. You do as I say, kind of, you know, it's more of a creative game. It's more of a collaborative game. So it's definitely a different mindset. And obviously it's you know, it's a game in which minorities, people of color had a voice early on, and were not afraid to use it. The NBA has, you know, I mean, you can certainly go back in time and look at different instances in the NBA where they did not do the right thing. But there is a long legacy of civil rights and social action. I mean, you go back to, you know, Bill Russell with the greatest NBA team of all time in terms of championships. So I think that the players don't run scared in the NBA and by extension, the WNBA. I think they feel that they have a voice. I think the current leadership in the NBA is very supportive and has made it clear that they are willing to go to, you know, great measures, including, you know, when Adam Silver's first thing he had to do was remove the owner of the Clippers. So, I mean, there's a trust and a collaboration between owners, executives, and players that there just isn't in other sports. The NFL does its best to unempower its players, and there's a definite lack of trust there. Baseball kind of the same way. So I just think it's a culture that's grown up for a couple of different reasons over the course of time.
How do you think the professional leagues are going to handle? There has been some blowback to their support of the Black Lives Matter movement amongst fans. And I think it's been sort of not that obvious because there haven't been fans in the stands. You know, people haven't been booed for kneeling. They haven't been booed for, you know, wearing T-shirts, Black Lives Matter, Breonna Taylor. Am I wrong about this? I mean, are they getting some blowback on this?
I'm not sure how much. I mean, hey, it's 2020. There's blowback on everything, right? Everyone's on social media spouting off hate speech to, you know, any target you can imagine. So of course they're getting blowback. I mean, the very first game of the NFL season, we saw the Chiefs and the Texans link arms in a show of unity, and they were booed by the Kansas City fans. However many were in the stands, like 10,000 or something. So sure, there's going to be blowback. The one thing I do think is absurd is that people are like saying, see, those ratings are down. That's because of all this social justice movement. I mean, if you look, except for the NFL, ratings are down everywhere, including the Masters with those crazy progressive social justice golfers. You know, I mean, I think it's weird that the NFL is the only thing that seems to be garnering ratings. And certainly Roger Goodell has come out and publicly apologized for some of his past comments and has said that a team should hire Colin Kaepernick and is in a Black Lives Matter commercial and has paid as much lip service to the cause as probably any commissioners. And yet the NFL ratings are through the roof. So I don't know. You can take any slice of any of this and, you know, look at it through your own prism and decide that, you know, this is happening because of this. This is happening because of this. I do think there's going to be a normalizing of social protest and Black Lives Matter, an acceptance by owners and executives and advertisers that you know, wasn't happening a couple of years ago. So I do think there's something that when fans are back in the stands, I think they're going to be kind of used to seeing these things, and how they react, we'll see. But I don't think it's going to be some like, oh my gosh, that's so radical, because now it's kind of a part of almost every sporting event you watch in some fashion.
Well, you mentioned Colin Kaepernick, and presuming he never takes another snap in the NFL, which I figure is probably pretty certain.
Although
okay,
the craziness of this pandemic, you see all these people being pulled off the street to play games, and a guy who led a team to the Super Bowl, you know, there's no place for him, I guess. But okay.
Well, no, I was just going to ask, how do you think he's going to be remembered? I mean, in the context of these times, I mean,
I know how he's going to be remembered. He's going to be remembered. You ever go down to San Jose State and look at the statue? That's the way he's going to be remembered. He's going to be the Tommy Smith and John Carlos and Harry Edwards of his day, because you know, everything we saw this summer with what was happening in the streets just showed that Colin Kaepernick, there was a reason he was talking about these things. I mean, obviously it's been happening, but it was like the whole world kind of stopped and understood, you know, what it was that Colin Kaepernick, you could still disagree with maybe what his approach was, but you can't disagree that what he was concerned about is a very real thing and was happening. And so, you know, the NFL has made him a martyr. He has sacrificed his career, you know, and you can argue about, and obviously here in the Bay Area, we're super familiar with all the ins and outs of Colin's career and the arc of it. And you could argue that, you know, gosh, he wasn't very good those last year. Well, was a lot better than a lot of guys who have played quarterback in the NFL since. So there's, you know, I think he's going to be, he's already in the history books. I mean, I have a friend who teaches high school in France, and half her kids write papers on Colin Kaepernick. I mean, he is already a touchstone for the social justice movement, and I think that that's the way history is going to remember him.
A couple of questions from the members. Could you tell us the top two most interesting experiences you have had with players? And they sort of want to name names.
They want, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. So that's top two most interesting experiences with players. I don't know that actually I could narrow it down that way. I have a infamous run-in with Charles Haley when I was brand new on the beat in 1990. But I don't really dwell on that. That was kind of the thing that female sports writers had to deal with all the time. You know, you know, I couldn't really, you know, I mean, some of the things I cherish most are getting to know people outside of the game, outside of the locker room, outside of the context of the building. So, you know, getting to go to Steph and Aisha Curry's house when Steph was just becoming a superstar, and kind of seeing their sweet little life and how it was changing was kind of amazing. Same with some of the 49ers like Steve Young. Yeah, I mean, I've just, we have a great sports area here. We've had some of the most interesting sports figures in history to come through here, and it's just been it's kind of been a joy to be able to cover a lot of them.
Another question. What is your take on Jed York spending $3 million to essentially buy the Santa Clara City Council?
Well, Charlie, as all journalists are told, the first thing is follow the money, right? And when someone's spending over $3 million, I think it ended up being close to $4 million on a city council race in a town of 150,000 people, I think it's kind of clear what they're trying to do, right? Especially given the contentious nature between the 49ers and the city and the city council. So I think he was definitely trying to swing the city council to be more favorable to him. Now, I got emails from people objecting to that, saying, you know, that they weren't in his pocket and blah, blah, blah. It was unfair to characterize it that way. But Jed was not putting that money in out of the goodness of his heart. I guarantee you. I know Jed York. That was not what he was thinking. So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't work for the Mercury News anymore, and I don't live down there, but you know, the old adage, never get in bed with a professional sports team, I think has come very true very clearly in Santa Clara's case. It is a very fractured, contentious relationship.
And a couple of people wanted to ask about women in sports, and I'm just going to reframe this slightly differently. I mean, there seems to, because of Sarah Fuller,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that just absolutely appalled me when she came on as the kicker for Vanderbilt,
Mm-hmm.
was what she ran into on social media. She handled it beautifully,
Right.
but clearly women are treated differently in sports. But is it changing at all? Is it are they getting out of that second place spot that they've always been in, like in the world of soccer and the Olympics? And
Well, in our country, in the world of soccer, the women are by far the most kick-ass team that we have, and by far the biggest stars. You know, I mean, and
Yeah.
women's soccer around the country, around the globe, has grown exponentially. All the premier European clubs are putting money to varying degrees into women's teams, which is why you see some of our biggest stars like Alex Morgan and Rose Lavelle going and playing overseas. But it's an evolving thing, and I think what I love about this generation of women athletes is that they don't take any shit from anyone, and this, as a woman in sports, the trolling on social media that I get is a daily thing. It's just, you just have to shut your ears to it. And Sarah Fuller, I'm sure, learned that. And, I pay far less attention to the trolls on social media than to what, the people who asked her to come in, because they tried out some of their football players who weren't kickers and none of them could do the job. And I pay attention to what they were saying. And they said how Vanderbilt doesn't have a men's soccer team. That's a whole different issue, which is too bad. But they turned to the soccer team. They turned to her, and she practiced for like 4 days, and she got exponentially better. And of course, even though Vanderbilt's team is so lousy, they never scored, so she never got to do another kickoff or a field goal or a extra point. But they said that practicing all those things, she got better every single day, and she was like, they were thrilled that she was able to do it for them. So that to me is far more telling than whatever some guy in his mommy's basement who has probably never played football in his life thinks about it. So,
Well, Ann, we've reached the 1:15 cutoff point here. I want to interrupt just a second here to thank you for this program. It's very fascinating stuff with these sports teams trying to do what they can to save up on the money. We've made a contribution on your behalf and on behalf of all of our program speakers to our city forest. It's a nonprofit here in San Jose, which will plant 46 shade trees in East San Jose to combat the heat islands and maybe improve climate change and improve the neighborhoods with beauty and habitats for wildlife. So we want to thank you for that. I don't know, will you be available for a few minutes after we sign off the formal part of the program?
sure.
Okay, well, let me just say then that next week's speaker is Esther Wojcicki, speaking on how to raise successful people even in the pandemic. And wait until you hear who she raised. She's a journalism master's degree out of UC Berkeley, an internationally known journalism educator and founder of Palo Alto High School Media Arts Program, one of the nation's most distinguished scholastic media programs. Among her honors, Distinguished Visiting Scholar at Stanford, MacArthur Foundation Research Fellow, California Teacher of the Year, and the recipient of the Columbia University's Scholastic Press. She's a speaker on many conferences, including TED Talks and the G20 Summit. She co-authored Moonshots in Education, and she launched Blended Learning in the Classroom, a guide to revolutionizing education for the digital age by giving students the power to improve their innovation skills. She knows something about that because she's the mother of 3 daughters. Wait until you hear. Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube. Janet Wojcicki, a pediatrics professor at UCSF Medical School. And her 3rd daughter, Ann Wojcicki, CEO of 23andMe. What do you think of that? So tune in next week and you'll hear some amazing tips on how to raise your successful people, even in a pandemic. So thank you. And that completes our formal part of the program. And back to you, Ms. Killion, if you are available, and we'll open up the microphones to see if any of our listeners have some questions for you. Take it away, guys.
And there was actually one question I didn't get to, and it's sort of the biggest sporting event in the world. You've been to 11 Olympics. What are the Olympics going to be like in Tokyo next summer?
Well, one, are they going to happen? I don't know. You know, I think that they're going to try very hard. You know, I guess we're thinking that there could be a vaccine. Now, do we use the vaccine to vaccinate Olympic athletes? I would certainly rather see Olympic athletes be vaccinated before, you know, NFL or MLB, because I do believe, corny as it may be, that the Olympics, especially in this fractured world we live in, serve an important purpose symbolically, you know, emotionally, that connects us all. So I would love to see it happen. Very disappointed that, you know, I had my ticket to Tokyo. I was ready to go. I think I can't imagine that there will be fans, but then again, the dollar seems to be making decisions on everything. Money is the reason behind decisions. So, you know, Tokyo has invested a tremendous amount of money, and they may try and sell tickets. I don't know. I think it's just too early. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen at Christmas if the 49ers can come back, you know, and that's in 3 weeks. I have no idea what's going to happen in July.
Yeah. Well, you raised a good issue on priorities, which somebody else has already asked about. I mean, you mentioned in the one of the recent columns you wrote that the UCLA athletes were able to were tested like almost every day, but the frontline medical workers at the UCLA medical facilities couldn't get tests.
Right.
So, and that's just one example. I mean, the priorities seem a little bit out of whack. And I think there's a possibility that all of a sudden we're going to be discovering that essential workers are going to include NFL players and so forth in terms of the vaccine.
Well, I would be very concerned about that, considering, I mean, and everyone says, well, the NFL is paying for it. The NFL is paying for it. You know, MLB was paying for it. They're, you know, why do we care? Well, I care because registered nurses and hospital workers are not getting tested, and they're on the front lines. And yet I mean, it just, I don't care who's paying for it. It just is crazy that, you know, I mean, even Tora Vanderveer said to me the other day, she said, I'm perfectly healthy and I get tested 8 times a week so she can conduct basketball practice. Now it's her job and she wants to do it. And those are the, you know, so, I mean, that's the thing, is everyone wants to do their job, whether it be, you know, playing a football game or coaching a basketball game or helping cancer patients in a, you know, or COVID patients. But the fact that some people have these amazing resources available to them so that sports can be played, whereas the most fundamental thing in a pandemic, which is keeping hospital workers healthy, is not, you know, it just, again, I mean, our priorities are bananas, I think.
This is from a very, someone who I know is a very devoted 49ers fan. Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to come back? Or is he?
Kyle has made it sound as though he might come back toward the end of the season. I don't know when that would be. And it might just be the final game. It might be the final 2 games. I don't know. You know, yeah. I mean, to be honest, as you can tell from what we're talking about, the games and the nitty gritty of how these things play out are to me, so much less interesting than, you know, these big picture issues about the pandemic and social justice, which is really all I've been writing about for 8 months. So yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think there is an expectation though that he will be back.
Yeah, I think that was more of a long-term question. Is he the answer?
You know, I think he's pretty good, and not everybody can have Patrick Mahomes. So I think he's pretty good. I think he's better than Jared Goff. I think Kyler Murray is dynamic at times and looks lost at other times. He's incredibly fast, but so I would say Jimmy is at times the second best quarterback in the division, sometimes the third best. But you know, it's Russell Wilson's division for the moment, for sure.
And I don't see any more questions, but I want to thank you again so very, very much. And it was great to see you. We haven't actually had a chance to talk in a while, so
I know it's great to see your face, Charlie.
Yeah, and you know, Sal is our new president, so you know, we're taking over the world down here. President Fernando, I think that probably wraps it up. And
sure, thank you, Charlie. Thank you for masterful weaving through these many questions that our Rotarians had for Ann Killion. And you didn't pull any punches. You told it like it is. And that was pretty refreshing. So thanks very much. And I hope you stay healthy and stay safe up there in Marin County.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
All right.
Ann.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
so much, Ann.
Thank you.